I thought you might be interested in what the campsites are like here in Iceland. In a nutshell, they're quite basic. They're clean, and I think that it has to be the most important thing. They're clean and tidy. There's no litter. In fact, Iceland has no litter, which is really nice. Um, but they're very basic. The showers can be and toilet compartments can be quite austere. I've had a few where they've just been made of concrete walls, um, and you're showering in a concrete cubicle. Not very nice, really. But the water has been hot and plentiful. Probably a lot of the time it comes from their geothermal springs, so they're not too bothered if you have a long shower. Um, the wardens, every one of them has spoken English, most of them very good English, so it's absolutely not a problem there at all. Almost all of their signage is in English as well as Icelandic. The east of the country and the north, I've gone anti-clockwise around Iceland, and then further into the Wester Fjords, as they call them. That was very quiet up there. The roads were quiet. Even so, the campsites tended to fill up in the evenings, and I think a lot of the tourists here are flying in, renting really basic camper vans. I mean, a lot of them are just vans. They haven't even got windows. And I've seen inside one of them, and it was bare metal or painted metal inside, so pretty, yeah, not great really. And I think they're whizzing around the island probably in a week, trying to tick off all the things on their bucket list, to say they've seen the sights. And I'm not sure it's the best way to experience everything Iceland's got, but you know, each to their own. But what it means is, at about 5 o'clock in the evening, I'm pulling into a campsite around about 5, and it's very quiet and it's nice, and I find a space, I hook up, I put my charger in the EV, and have a cup of tea. As time goes on, sort of 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock in the evening, more and more vans are coming in. There's hardly any caravans. It's 95% motorhomes or vans, and they all come in really late. And I've had plenty of times when they've been arriving at 11 o'clock at night, some even later than that. I've got to say, personally, I think that's a bit antisocial, because it wakes everybody up, doesn't it? Bearing in mind the campsites, the campgrounds are generally on stones. A few have been on grass, but they don't have that much grass here, or that much soil to have that much grass. So most campgrounds are, it's like a type 1 material, if you know what that is, but small stones. But when a vehicle drives over it, it really crackles and makes quite a loud noise, which is not good at 11 o'clock at night. So you've got to sort of take that on the chin, I guess. You can't come here and say, I'm British, you can't do that. So that's how it is here. The showers is, I've had 2 or 3, including where I am now, and I'm on a site near a place called Vik, which of course is rather similar to our campervan name. The showers have been communal. You open a door and there's 2, 3, 4 shower heads coming down, ready for you to stand under. I don't think they're unisex, but even so, they're not quite what I have in mind. So I've given those a bit of a swerve. But of course, it's very Scandinavian, isn't it? Like with the hot tubs and all of that business. So I guess when in Iceland, do as the Icelandics do, or don't, and just sit in your van and keep quiet. That's me. When I got across to Calais and needed to head up through the Benelux countries and Germany and Denmark to Hirschels at the very northern tip of Denmark, which I knew is about 800 or 900 miles, turned out to be 900. I opened up Charge Map app on my phone that I'd previously installed, and it turned out to be an excellent app, I think, for finding charge points on the route. But you put in the charge map what your vehicle is, and it didn't have Vauxhall listed, but it had it as an Opel, which is effectively the same vehicle. So you tell it the vehicle you've got, you tell it what percentage you are comfortable with arriving at a charge point. So you could say 20%, you could say 30% or whatever, or 10%. And what you expect to charge up to, which is suggested would be 80%, because that's where it charges fastest to, from 20% to 80%. After 80%, the rate of charge slows down considerably. We'll come back to that a bit later. So you put your vehicle details in, and it then suggests the route. So it's a nav, it uses Google Maps, it transfers it across to Google Maps, suggests the route, and it suggests the stopping points where you should charge. Now it's 900 miles, and if you said, well, let's do 100 miles on a battery, on a full state of charge, then we need 9 charges, 9 stops. But it actually put 11 in. Now, I thought 11 was quite a lot to start with, but when you think about it, 3 a day, it was 2 days, I got up there in 2 days, and so 400 odd miles a day, which is plenty, I think, that's nothing wrong with that. But I would stop for breakfast, so I'd do a few miles before breakfast, so I'd stop for breakfast, and another stop is when I had my lunch for about an hour, and of course you have another stop in the evening for your evening meal. So that's 3 a day, just that you would absolutely need to stop for anyway, because you need food and sustenance. It worked out at 1 or 2 extra a day than what I would have stopped anyway had I been in a petrol vehicle. I was interested to see that ChargeMap, quite correctly, reinforces my belief and my assertion that you can get to your destination quicker if you stop more frequently but charge for a shorter time. And what I mean by that is, if you charge when the battery is as low as 20% but not lower, and charge up to 80%, the rate of charge is significantly faster in that band than it would be after 80% or below 20%. So it's keeping you in the sweet spot. That's what it's doing. And what that means is, about every 75, 80 miles, it's saying pull in and have a half-hour charge. Now, when I had my lunch, I took more than half an hour. I was about an hour, because I'd have proper cooked myself some food and everything. And on that occasion, I think when I pulled out of that service station, it was at 96%. So it recalculates. Oh, well, if you're starting off with 96%, then you can go to this charge station. So it's quite clever, really, quite intuitive as well to use. So I went with it. I followed the plan, and apart from one where I thought I knew better, which turned out to be not the case, but apart from that, I got up to North Denmark with no issues. The charging stations in France, I've known from previous experience, are pretty good. I didn't need a French one this time, but I did in Belgium, and that was absolutely fine. It was contactless on my debit card. Germany was very good, contactless card again, as was Holland. Holland was very good. I had no issues whatsoever. When I got to Denmark, they weren't so good. They were a little bit behind, I would say, behind the curve. And I think I found one that was contactless, but most of them wanted me to use an app, which is a bit frustrating, because it's just why not all be contactless, which is how it's going, of course. So I had to download their app, and in Denmark I was recommended to a company called Clever, as it sounds, clever, by a Danish chap with a Tesla, and he said that's pretty much the one you want, and that's what I did. So it meant I pulled into the charging station, opened up the app, it knows your location from your phone, and you might have, say, 4 chargers there. You have to tell it it's charger number 1, 2, 3 or 4, and as long as you've already signed up with them, you hit the start charging button and off it goes. So yeah, it's easy enough. It's not too not too troublesome at all. So that's how I got up to northern Denmark. So let's talk about some costs and efficiencies with our electric camper van. Well, as you know, it's based on the Vauxhall Combo E-Life, and that has a 50 kilowatt hour battery and 136 brake horsepower motor. I've been driving the entire time I've been away in normal mode. The heating has been at a normal 19, 20 degrees, something like that. Absolutely normal. I'm not prepared to compromise, and you don't have to. The temperatures here, and that is very relevant because colder temperatures are not kind for an EV. So the temperatures here, I've had daytime down as low as 6 degrees, and then it went up to about 8 degrees by about 10 o'clock in the morning. And I've had it as high as 19 degrees for one few hours one afternoon, before quickly dropping back to 10 or 11 degrees in the evening. When you step outside with those temperatures, you're suddenly hit with, most of the time, a pretty stiff breeze, and that makes it feel a lot colder. So far in Iceland, I've been here 11 days and I've covered 1,152 miles, which of course is just over 100 miles a day on average. We've averaged 2.9 miles per kilowatt hour. So that means we've used 397 kilowatt hours of energy, of electricity. Iceland are pretty typically charging what works out to be 45 pence per kilowatt hour. So that's a fair bit cheaper than at home in the UK. If you simply do the maths on what I've just said, that comes to £178 that I would have spent on electricity, charging the vehicle to cover 1,152 miles. But that's not the full story, but just hold that thought for a moment. If we compared that to a 40 mile per gallon petrol vehicle, this same vehicle but with a petrol engine doing 40 to the gallon, which it would do, that would have used up about 130 litres of petrol, and that would have cost about £260, because their petrol here is a bit dearer than in the UK at just over £2 a litre. So you've got £178 on electricity versus £260 petrol. So, as I say, that's not the full picture, because I've been charging every night apart from one on a campsite. I don't arrive with zero in the tank. That would be daft, and there's no need. So I've been arriving on sites, I might have had 40%, 50%, 70% in some occasions, in which case it's only got a smaller amount to charge up to 100% state of charge overnight. On average, I've charged about 60 miles of range per night. That's an average. That works out at about 220 kilowatt hours, so 220 units. The units like you have at home, in your house at home, per unit. So if you take that off of the 397 that I've used in total, it means that the amount I've actually been paying for out there on the road at the public charging points is 177 kilowatt hours, and that works out at £80. So if you compare that £80 to the 230 that a petrol would have cost and the same tour, then that is a big saving and really quite significant. There's more to it than that, of course. More advantages. The electric, every morning before I set off, about 20 minutes before I leave, I get my phone out in front of me and I go to the Vauxhall app and I tap on the app to start the preconditioning. Now that puts the heating on in the vehicle if it needed it. It demists the windows, but it also, crucially, it warms the battery. The batteries on these are pretty sophisticated. They are warmed and cooled for efficiency. So it means when I set off in the morning, instead of being an absolutely stone cold battery, which would be very less efficient than a warm battery, I set off with a pre-warmed battery. So it's very important. It's almost as important as using the regen braking button that I was talking about in another video. So we go to the Vauxhall app. It takes a minute or so to communicate with the vehicle. So we're in now. We hit the climate button, hit the activate now, and it says request being sent. And that's now running nicely, and the heating is on. The windscreen is starting to clear, and in about 20 minutes that'll be all nice and ready to set off on our trip today. When I left Dover and headed on up to Hirschels at the very northern tip of Denmark, that was about just over 900 miles, and I actually averaged 3.6 miles per kilowatt hour on that run, so at about 180 mile of range. But the weather was just about perfect. It was 22, 24 degrees. So the heating wasn't doing anything. The aircon was on, but not doing a lot, just dehumidifying the air as aircon does. And I was driving very steadily. So that's what you can get. But of course, the average range, if you talk about range on Iceland, that's down to about 140 miles, 135 miles at times. I want to talk about the range because it's not all about the range. I know that might sound silly, but when you've got an EV such as we have with our campervan, when you're driving along and you're on holiday and you pull in at a site or an attraction, and now and again, I mean, it's more common than you might think, they'll probably have an EV charger, and sometimes they're even free, which is nice. There'll be slow chargers, maybe 30 miles in an hour they will put in, but I've done that a few times. One of them was Giza, the original Giza place in Iceland. They had it given away for free, which was rather nice. So that puts 30 miles in there, which was good. There's been a couple of others where I've found the same. So it's not about how far will it go on a full charge. Oh, it'll do 170 miles. Okay. But you don't do 165 miles and then think, blimey, I need to fill up with juice, do you? So I'm running on about 80, 90 miles. One occasion I did 120 miles on a tank on a full charge. But most of the time I'm topping up at 80, 90 miles, which on these roads, because they're fairly slow, and mountainous, these roads, that's 2.5, 3 hours, something like that can be, because you're stopping, taking pictures. I'm doing a lot of stopping videos and drone flying and so on. which is terrible for efficiency, because efficiency wants smooth, steady progress. So my efficiency figures, I'm quite sure, would be at least 3, if it wasn't for all the photographic work I'm doing. So I think 2.9 is pretty good. I just wanted to show you something that's extremely useful in Google Maps. The blue dot there, as you probably know, is our location, or location of our phone, which, as you can see, we're somewhat off of the Route 1. We're down a track that's we've been about 4 or 5 miles off of the main road. Had some lunch, and now we're heading for a campsite, or I want a campsite. So in the search bar, you type in campsite, which I've done before. Comes up with the closest ones to our location, and I feel like going to this one. So tap on that, gives you the address and everything, and people have posted various photographs of it. So hit directions, and tells us 35 minutes, 24 miles, be a bit longer than that because we're only going slow with the roads. Hit start, and it opens up the navigation in Google Maps, and that's it, ready to go. If you want, you can swipe that up to the dashboard screen, the screen on the car. But it's very good indeed. So we've been away 23 days so far, and I thought now would be a pretty representative time to go through the solar performance, see how that's been doing. So I've opened up the app on my phone. It's a Victron app, and you can see that I've started showing you the history at 23 days ago, so that's when we left. And if you look here, 960 watt hours, 680, 1120 there. Not good there. That, I think, was when we were on the ferry overnight. Then back on Faro, that would be 1.27 kilowatt hours on that day. That's the most in one day, the highest yield, 1.41 kilowatt hours, which is extremely good. And then if we come up to today, we've got just over 1 kilowatt has gone in today. So down the bottom it says 25 kilowatt hour, the lifetime total. Now, although this camper was new when we left Brentwood, it had actually been out for about a week and a half some of the time. So it started off at 4 kilowatts. So we've actually gained a yield of 21 kilowatts in 23 days. So it's just shy of 1 kilowatt a day. What that means is all of my cooking, the mini oven I have, the microwave, induction hob, all of that, and I've even used the fan heater a few times from the inverter, all of that is less than what the solar has been putting in. And that, of course, is the point. It means that we are absolutely self-sufficient off-grid. Because we are self-sufficient for the camper, that we can afford to use the campsite electricity to charge the EV. That's how it works, and it does work. So there we are, those are my ramblings so far. Hope you got something out of it, bit of interest there for most people, I hope, and we'll see you next time.